In just 37 seconds, one of Britain's most respected actors completely dismantled a television host live on air, exposing years of buried frustration in a takedown so brutal that the entire studio fell silent. What started as simple questions about a new movie turned into an explosive war of words that had Stephen Graham storming off set while cameras kept rolling. Last night's episode was supposed to be straightforward. Stephen Graham, the incredibly talented actor known for playing tough characters in shows and movies, was there to talk about his latest project. He walked onto the set wearing a casual jacket and jeans, smiling at the audience who clapped loudly for him. Lorraine Kelly sat across from him, in her bright-colored outfit. Her notes spread across the desk in front of her. The first few minutes seemed normal enough. They talked about the weather, Stephen mentioned he'd been busy filming, and Lorraine made small talk about his journey to the studio. But anyone watching closely could see something in Stephen's eyes. A tiredness, maybe. Or perhaps something else brewing underneath. "So, Stephen," Lorraine began, leaning forward with that smile she always wore, "you've been in the business for quite some time now, playing all these gritty, working-class characters. Do you ever worry about being typecast?" Stephen shifted in his seat. His jaw tightened just slightly. "I play characters that mean something to me," he said carefully. "Characters that represent real people." Lorraine nodded, but there was something dismissive in the way she did it. Yes, of course. But surely you must want to branch out? Play someone a bit more sophisticated? Perhaps a lawyer or a doctor?" The studio audience went quiet. Stephen's smile faded completely now. "What's wrong with the characters I play?" he asked, his voice steady but with an edge to it. "Oh, nothing. Nothing at all," Lorraine said quickly, waving her hand like she was swatting away a fly. "I just think someone with your talent could do so much more. You know, appeal to a wider audience, perhaps." Stephen sat back in his chair, studying her. A wider audience than who exactly? Lorraine laughed, that high-pitched laugh she did when she was nervous. "Well, you know what I mean. Not everyone relates to these tough guy roles. Some people want to see something more refined." "More refined," Stephen repeated slowly, like he was tasting the words and finding them bitter. "You mean less working class, less northern, less real?" The tension in the studio became thick enough to cut with a knife. The camera operators glanced at each other. Someone in the production booth was probably panicking, wondering whether to cut to a commercial break. "Now, Stephen, don't put words in my mouth," Lorraine said, her smile becoming more forced. "I'm simply saying that you have range. Why limit yourself to these one-dimensional tough guy parts?" That's when Stephen's expression changed completely. His eyes went cold. "One-dimensional?" he said quietly. "You think the people I've spent my entire career honoring are one-dimensional?" Lorraine seemed to realize she'd made a mistake, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I think as an actor, you should challenge yourself. Play someone educated. Someone who doesn't solve problems with their fists." Stephen leaned forward now, his voice getting stronger. "Do you have any idea how insulting that is? To the people I grew up with? To the communities I represent?" "I'm not trying to insult anyone," Lorraine protested, but her voice had an irritated edge to it now. "I'm trying to give you career advice." "Career advice?" Stephen's voice rose slightly. "From someone who sits behind a desk every morning asking celebrities about their holidays? That's rich." The audience gasped. A few people even applauded before quickly stopping themselves. Lorraine's face flushed red. Her producer was definitely screaming in her earpiece now, but she ignored it. "Excuse me," Lorraine said, her friendly mask slipping completely. "I've been doing this job for decades. I think I know a thing or two about entertainment." "You've been doing it for decades," Stephen shot back. "Doing the same softball interviews, never challenging anyone, never digging deeper. Just surface-level nonsense about who's dating who and what everyone wore to some party." Lorraine stood up slightly from her chair, her notes falling to the floor. "How dare you come on my show and disrespect me like this? I invited you here as a guest." "You invited me here to make me feel small," Stephen said, standing up as well. "To imply that where I come from isn't good enough. That the stories I tell don't matter because they're about real people instead of your middle-class fantasy world." The second section of the interview had begun, and there was no going back now. The cameras kept rolling, catching every moment of what was quickly becoming the most dramatic confrontation in the show's history. Lorraine pointed her finger at Stephen. You're being completely unreasonable. I was trying to have a civilized conversation. Civilized? Stephen laughed, but there was no humor in it. There's nothing civilized about what you were doing. You were being condescending. You were looking down your nose at the kind of people I grew up with. I was not, Lorraine insisted, her voice getting shrill now. You're twisting my words. Am I? Stephen challenged. Then let me ask you this. When was the last time you spent any time in a working-class neighborhood? When was the last time you talked to someone who works in a factory, or drives a taxi, or cleans offices? When was the last time you told a story that mattered to those people? Lorraine's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's not. I mean, my show appeals to everyone. Your show appeals to people who have nothing better to do at 10 in the morning than watch celebrities talk about their new diet books, Stephen said bluntly. And there's nothing wrong with that. But don't pretend you're doing something important. Don't pretend you have the right to tell me what roles I should or shouldn't take. The audience was completely silent now. Some people looked shocked. Others looked like they wanted to cheer but didn't dare. The camera operator zoomed in on both faces, capturing every emotion. Lorraine tried to regain control. Stephen, I think you're overreacting to what was meant as a compliment. I was saying you're talented enough to do anything. No, Stephen said firmly. You were saying the things I choose to do aren't good enough. There's a difference. And I'm tired of people like you making those kinds of judgments. People like me? Lorraine's voice went up an octave. What's that supposed to mean? People who've never struggled, Stephen said, his words coming faster now. People who got their jobs through connections and playing it safe. People who think they're better than everyone else because they dress nice and use fancy words. Lorraine gasped dramatically. That is completely unfair. You don't know anything about my life or my struggles. Don't I? Stephen challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've had a pretty comfortable ride. And now you sit here every morning judging people who actually take risks, who actually try to tell stories that mean something. I am not judging anyone, Lorraine said, but her voice cracked slightly. I was trying to have a professional conversation about your career trajectory. My career trajectory is just fine, thanks, Stephen said coldly. I don't need advice from someone who thinks success means selling out and forgetting where you came from. Lorraine slammed her hand on the desk. That is enough. You're being incredibly rude and I won't stand for it. Then don't, Stephen said simply. I didn't come here to be talked down to anyway. The producer was frantically trying to signal for a commercial break, but Lorraine wasn't done. Her professional composure had completely shattered now, revealing something uglier underneath. You know what your problem is? Lorraine said, her voice dripping with venom. You're so defensive about your background that you can't hear a simple suggestion without turning it into some class warfare drama. Stephen's face went very still. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but deadly serious. My problem? Let me tell you what the real problem is. The real problem is people like you who think representing working-class life is somehow less than, who think the only stories worth telling are about rich people and their problems. I never said that, Lorraine protested weakly. You didn't have to say it, Stephen replied. It was in every word you spoke. Every time you suggested I should play someone sophisticated or refined, as if the people I play aren't sophisticated in their own way, as if they don't have depth and complexity. Lorraine crossed her arms defensively. You're reading way too much into this. Am I? Stephen's voice was rising again. Then why did you feel the need to question my choices at all? Why couldn't you just ask about the actual film I came here to promote? Why did it have to become about your opinions on what I should be doing with my career? Because I'm an interviewer, Lorraine shot back. That's what I do. I ask questions. No, what you do is make assumptions, Stephen corrected her. You assumed that because I play certain types of characters, I must be limiting myself. You assumed that aspiring to tell working-class stories is somehow settling. You assumed wrong. The third and final section had arrived. There was no coming back from this. Everyone in the studio knew they were witnessing something that would be replayed and discussed for weeks to come. Lorraine tried one more time to take the moral high ground. Stephen, I understand you're passionate about your work, but there's no need for this hostility. We can disagree without being disagreeable. Stephen shook his head slowly. No, we can't. Not about this. Because this isn't just about me. This is about every working-class actor who gets told they need to elevate themselves. Every writer who gets told their stories aren't universal enough. Every person who gets made to feel like where they come from is something to be ashamed of. Nobody said anything about being ashamed, Lorraine argued, but her voice had lost its strength. You didn't have to, Stephen said. It was implied in everything you said. And you know what? I'm done. I'm done with interviews where I have to defend my choices to people who don't understand them. I'm done with being polite while someone insults everything I stand for. Lorraine's eyes went wide. You're not actually leaving, are you? We haven't even talked about your film yet. Stephen started unhooking his microphone. Maybe that tells you something. You were so busy trying to tell me what I should be doing that you forgot to actually do your job. This is completely unprofessional, Lorraine said, her voice getting desperate now. You can't just walk off. Watch me, Stephen said calmly. He stood up fully now, the microphone pack in his hand. You'll regret this, Lorraine warned, trying to sound threatening but mostly sounding panicked. Walking off a show like this. It won't look good. Stephen paused and looked directly at her. You know what won't look good? The footage of you telling a working-class actor that playing working-class characters is beneath him. That's what won't look good. Lorraine's face went pale as she realized the cameras had captured everything. I never said it was beneath you. You said I was limiting myself, Stephen reminded her. You said the characters were one-dimensional. You implied I should want to play someone more sophisticated. How else am I supposed to take that? You're deliberately misinterpreting me, Lorraine said desperately. Am I? Stephen looked around at the audience. Did anyone else hear it differently? A few people in the audience shook their heads. Someone shouted, "She was well out of order," before being hushed by the people around them. Lorraine spun on the audience. Don't any of you dare. This is being edited. Is it? Stephen asked pointedly. Because it looks pretty live to me. Lorraine turned back to him, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. If you walk off this set right now, you'll never be invited back. Stephen actually laughed at that. Do you think that's a threat? Do you honestly think I want to come back to a show where the host spends more time judging guests than actually interviewing them? I wasn't judging you, Lorraine insisted one more time, but even she didn't sound convinced anymore. Yes, you were, Stephen said firmly. And the sad thing is, you probably don't even realize you're doing it. You're so used to looking down on certain types of people and stories that it's become automatic. You don't even see it as insulting anymore. Lorraine opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She looked around helplessly at her producers, at the cameras, at the audience that was watching this all unfold with wide eyes. Stephen placed his microphone pack on the chair. I came here to talk about a film that matters to me. A film about real people facing real struggles. But instead, I got lectured about how I should be doing something better with my time. Well, here's some free advice for you, Lorraine. Maybe you should spend less time telling other people how to do their jobs, and more time figuring out how to do yours properly. Get out then, Lorraine finally shouted, losing all pretense of professionalism. Just get the hell out of my studio. Gladly, Stephen said coldly. He turned to walk away, then paused and looked back one more time. You know what the worst part is? You'll probably go into the next commercial break and tell everyone I was the problem. You'll make yourself the victim in all this. But everyone watching knows the truth. They saw what you did. They heard what you said. I said nothing wrong, Lorraine insisted, but her voice wavered. Keep telling yourself that, Stephen said. He looked at the nearest camera. For anyone watching who's ever been made to feel like their background is something to overcome, rather than something to be proud of, I see you. Your stories matter. Don't let anyone tell you different. With that, he walked off the set. The cameras followed him as he pushed through the studio doors and disappeared down the corridor. The sound of the heavy door slamming echoed through the studio. Lorraine stood there for a moment, looking completely lost. The audience sat in stunned silence. Nobody knew what to do or say. The show had never experienced anything like this before. Finally, one of the producers ran onto the set and whispered frantically in Lorraine's ear. She nodded numbly, then looked at the camera with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, she said, her voice shaking slightly. That was unexpected. We'll be right back after these messages. But as the camera cut away, everyone knew that nothing could erase what had just happened. Stephen Graham had stood up for himself and for everyone who'd ever felt diminished by someone who should have known better, and the whole country had watched it happen live. The studio erupted into chaos as soon as they cut to commercial. Producers were shouting. Assistants were running around trying to figure out what to do next. And Lorraine Kelly sat at her desk, staring at the spot where Stephen had been sitting just moments before, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what had just occurred. The confrontation was over, but its impact had only just begun.